This series focuses on New Yorkers who are influential and intriguing. It would be hyperbole to say that each of them is a part of history, but that phrase applies when the subject is Gloria Steinem. She is one of the leaders of the feminist movement, and yet, despite her many years in the limelight, not everyone knows Gloria Steinem.
Sometimes people think I'm Gertrude Stein.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Hard to believe, since the writer Gertrude Stein died in 1946, about 20 years before the feminist movement was born. It is occasionally suggested now in the media that we live in an age of post-feminism. But don't tell that to Gloria Steinem.
It's just a normal stage of resistance to say it's over. Stage 1 of resistance is to say it's not necessary. Stage 2 is to say it used to be necessary, but it's not anymore.
At 76, the one-time leader of Ms. Magazine continues to travel and speak extensively, occasionally on behalf of the Women's Media Center, which she co-founded in 2005 to serve as a clearinghouse for progressive women to appear in the media. Steinem says there's a reason why the work shows no signs of slowing down.
If you think about social justice movements, you understand that unless they last a century, they aren't fully absorbed into the culture.
When Steinem became a public figure in the early 70s, it was suggested that her physical appearance, glamorous and fashionable, made her an appealing public face for the feminist movement. But Steinem says any perception of appearance plays into a bias against women.
A woman who's judged because she's so-called unattractive and a woman who's judged because she's so-called attractive have the same problem, which is they're being judged by their outsides, not by what's in their heads and in their hearts.
As a very public symbol of feminism, Steinem has faced more than her share of slings and arrows. One problem: she says she's lousy at conflict. For someone who is not crazy about conflict, it's an interesting juxtaposition.
I'm in the wrong business, you know, there's no doubt. But you know, since I hate conflict, I am good at finding common ground in a discussion.
Another difficult juxtaposition comes from all of Steinem's travels. For example, sleeping in a tent with poor women in North Dakota one night, at a New York high society gala the next, which she compares to being in a basement and sunshine.
It is surrealistic, literally. The contrast is so huge. If you're going to find somebody to help in the basement, you have to get somebody from the sunshine, probably. So you have to be the bridge between those two things.
Steinem's years on the road have provided her with plenty of stories and sayings, like this memorable observation from a cabbie in Boston.
We had a very unusual taxi driver because it was an old Irish woman. And she turned around before we got out and said to us, "Honey, if men could get pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament."
It's not easy being a national figure when you have difficulty remembering names.
I'm at an age where remembering something right away is as good as an orgasm. You know, I remembered.
Boy, if I've told you the number of interviewees who have said that on camera. So trust me, that's going in. But she says she is good at remembering narrative. Her own is memorable. Gloria Steinem grew up in Toledo. Her parents split up when she was young. Her mother, Ruth, suffered from a depression so serious that she often had to be cared for by young Gloria. Only after her mother's death in 1981 was Steinem able to write about it in the essay Ruth's Song. And after writing the essay, she didn't read it for more than a decade.
They say the longest journey is the journey from head to heart. All right, I had known it and written it, but I couldn't really fully absorb how sad it was.
Did your experience with your mom affect your decision not to have children?
I think intellectually it did, you know, because because I do understand that I had the experience young, very young, of being a caretaker. And being a small person, taking care of a big person, of course, is very different from the other way around, but I think some part of me said, okay, I don't want to do this again.
Steinem left the turmoil of Toledo for Smith College in Massachusetts, and then a 2-year fellowship in India. It was during this time that Steinem discovered she was pregnant and had an abortion.
I was just desperate. And there was no movement, there was no companionship. I didn't tell anyone ever, so it was only years later that it was only really covering that abortion hearing for New York Magazine and hearing other women testify about their experiences that I realized I wasn't alone.
She came to New York in the late 50s and eventually established herself as a working freelance journalist. One article from 1963 has garnered a lot of attention ever since its publication. Steinem went undercover, working at the Playboy Club in New York. She initially regretted the article because it cost her more serious assignments.
After feminism began to dawn on me, I realized that that actually was a good thing to have written. I mean, it did expose their working conditions. They did sue me, so it must have been had some effect.
She worked at New York Magazine in its early days in the late 60s, among writers like Jimmy Breslin and Dick Schaap. But then she wrote a column about abortion rights activists.
Those guys, very nice guys, sort of said to me, kind of one by one, Gloria, don't get involved with these crazy women. You've worked hard to be taken seriously. Don't get involved with this. And suddenly I realized that they didn't know who I was, and how could they? Because I had not been being forthright.
Steinem became one of the leaders of the feminist movement. She faced scrutiny, and not just from critics. Much was made of the internal debates among feminists.
If two guys are discussing an issue, they're reported as disagreeing about this issue. Two women are perceived as not being able to get along with each other.
Amidst the battles, there were lighter moments, like the time Steinem got a phone call to be part of a public service campaign featuring political opposites coming together to promote peaceful use of the space program.
Ms. Magazine called me and said, Ronald Reagan, who was then the president, is trying to reach you. I said, oh, you can do better than that. He was also very super polite. He kept saying, oh, I'm so sorry I disturbed you. And I said, and I kept trying to make him laugh. I said, can you imagine how I couldn't make him laugh?
Really?
No.
In the 90s, Ms. Magazine was sold, and Steinem had what she calls a very small experience with breast cancer. In 2000, at the age of 66, she married David Bale. He died only 3 years later. Steinem says the experience brought her back to her childhood, when a lack of attention made her feel not as real as others.
Somehow the intensity of the year that he was sick and in the hospital, and so I can't explain this, but it made me real to myself. The emotion was so intense and internal that it really made a difference.
Steinem is the author of several books and has been a public speaker for 40 years. Steinem says the thousands of meaningful moments she's had with people in airports, coffee shops, even the street repair guy on the block, are a huge gift.
Gloria, look at that sign. It says people working, instead of men working. Took us, I won't say the language he used anyway, to get that sign. And he says, and my daughter's an electrician, and she had to wait in a sleeping bag to get an apprenticeship, but she's an electrician, and isn't that great? So it's like a kind of instant friendship.
One-on-one with Gloria Steinem, Bud Mishkin, New York 1. Steinem says that meeting people both here and on the road is meaningful because her fame stems not from individual celebrity, say as an actor's, but rather from a movement that has changed people's lives. And if I had any doubt about the impact of her work, I was reminded by more than a few of my female colleagues here at New York 1 who told me as I left for the interview, please tell her thank you. You can see more of our interview with Gloria Steinem at our website at ny1.com/one-on-one.